one day I'll be brave enough to talk about getting older. One of the great contemplations of Buddhism is death, but I think along with death comes the creeping old age contemplation, because that's the chime of you're gonna die. You know, they have stories like people being warned again and again of, you know, when is it time to stop work and focus on being prepared for the time of death? And yeah, so the time of death is unknown, but old age is known. So old age is the time of death arriving slowly. But at the same time, you could live a really long number of years. Just you can become healthier than you were when you were young, when you're old. Even if you have aches and pains, and you know you're not as kind of resistant or don't recover as quickly as when you were younger to stress, it doesn't mean you can't go backwards in terms of like, or it's not, you're not getting younger, you're just increasing your health. Anyway, so we've changed lens to this very strange lens that I have, which is it's like a video camera lens, security camera lens that can work in really low light. It's a kind of experimental look, because I'm talking about photography mostly this time, and photography is like this lens, this massive lens that I've been using. It's a fisheye lens. It cost a lot of money. It's one of the. It wasn't given to me by Rigpa. It was donated by people who I held an event, and they wanted to be like sitting almost sideways to the camera, but be seen by their masters, Sogyo, in a video conference. And I said, well, that's wider than my widest lens. So this one goes extremely wide, and so it's like a fisheye, but it doesn't look fisheye. It kind of looks relatively straight lines because it's corrected fisheye. You know, it's and that means that I can sit right up to it like a webcam, you know, or a phone camera. But when I was looking at myself in that camera, everything just spiritually speaking, lenses show you how distorted what we think is normal is. Every lens changes things so much, and the lens of our concepts is something that teachers like to play on, because they like to point out that our concepts are holding us back. But of course, unless they're superior in their thinking and intelligence, then their concepts will just hold you back, or could be far worse. And that's really what happens a lot. But photography, yeah, and I mean, just making analogies between my spiritual life and photography for what it's worth. But I'm just going to reconnect, because at the start of this video, I think I'm going to edit this video differently. I'm going to talk my way into the video, and then I'm going to roll this thing that I used, which is a very fast slideshow. There was this time when I just had so many scans of films that I developed myself, and I was playing with some kind of slideshow thing, and I just thought, hey, I'll just select the whole collection and then put millions of and it was really weird to watch. Like I was like watching my whole life flash before my eyes, of the last years of photography, and just like any image is a memory, but particularly the when they're going, it kind of reminds me of how they talk about your life flashing before your eyes, or dreams. Or one time I meditated for a long time, and then I had this, instead of having one long train on one topic, I just had this continuous appearance of memories, but I didn't follow them, so then they were just like, like, you're not going to follow them? Oh, I'll give you tons. And they were just flashing, so it turned into like a stream of images. And I thought that was cool. I mean, that was actually a legit early, before Rigpa, in a different cult. What I see as a cult now. Well, I left it because it was a bit culty, but I didn't, just call it really a cult. I just thought it was limited in its scope of appropriateness to me, because it was Chinese Buddhism, and the translations and education program just wasn't there, whereas Rigpa had a very, relative comparison, had a very organized education program of these courses. So anyway, I'm going to connect film that I shot recently. In fact, I didn't shoot it. Mostly Supichaya shot it, but it was already shot. It was this kind of, not this camera exactly, but one very similar, a Samsung golden colored point and shoot film camera with a kind of let me turn it on. Yeah, this kind of zoom lens. This one is particularly funny because it's like a little bit phallic, to say the least. But anyway, she shot it, and it was a camera that had come back from France, and I was giving it to her. But then I noticed when I went to I was going to load film in it, and then I noticed in this window I could see, oh, there's a film in there. But I was like, well, maybe it's only half shot, so I'll just let her shoot the rest of those shots, and then we'll have some old ones. Well, I don't know where it's from. Obviously it'll be in the latter times that I was there. So, long story short, I got it developed. There is a long story to it actually, but when I took the film out, it was kind of broken. It was a film that I'd loaded myself from a bulk loader reel, which is a kind of, I might as well show you. You can buy kind of old films or new ones in sort of 150 meter rolls or 25 meters or whatever, which is a lot more than one film, like tiny 35mm. So you can put that roll inside something like this, and then you can, this is kind of useless to me because I don't have a winder for it, but you can put a winder, and then you attach this kind of film to the reel of the little canister, and then you load it up until it's full. There's a kind of a felt seal that stops the light from going through, and you do it when it's closed so it stays dark inside. I'll have to try and figure out how to make that work one day. But anyway, so there's a bunch of film in there. It's actually, that's another long story. It's this kind of super ancient plus X Kodak film from, it's more than 60 years old, which I was shooting at the time. So anyway, see how much of a long story it becomes. It was a loaded film, and the canister, I stuck it back together from just like a used one, but the bottom had fallen off, and then so I was in the dark, luckily, outside in this restaurant on top of a roof near the airport with my parents, and I thought, oh, I'll change the film since we just ran out, and open it, and I could feel that something's wrong, so I kind of tried to cup it in my hands, and I put it in my glasses case, and then I took it to the shop where I get films developed. Inside this kind of plastic film thing, and I said, don't open this and look what kind of film it is, just trust me, it's color, open it in the dark. And she put a wrapper around this with instructions, and they did it was great. And so that's the first role that I want to show. And not only that, I want to play music along with it, live, or not live because this is a pre-recorded edited video, but live to me, as I watch it, I was just going to improvise a bit of music. And I'm going to join it on the end of a slideshow, because it is kind of connected to these old shots. It's like shots from India that have been, in the end, this film came back and it's already been shot at least once, maybe more than once. It's got new things with me and Supichaya on over the top, or different places in Bangkok, laid on top of, in multiple exposure, where you can see through dark areas that were underexposed with more highly exposed new images, light that you've let through, and those two things merge together into a new shot. Colors sometimes shift. You mix green or you mix blue and you mix yellow, and you might get green, or you red with something, and purple comes out often. And I love that. To me, just the weirdness of the whole way you put it together, it's like two people mixing together, or two places and times mixing together. And that's like dreams. And people they almost always say, this is dreamlike, your things are very dreamlike. It's like, well, yeah, they are. Because dreams are you trying to process, ideas, concepts that don't make sense. And in the dream, they don't really make sense either. You're like going all over, why is this happening, and why does have this weird idea. This is what my dreams are like anyway, where there's some idea of how things work, and you're testing it in your dream somehow, but it doesn't really work like that, and it's dreamland, so strange things happen, and you keep trying to make either you give up or you keep trying to make sense of it. And I think that is why you need to dream, or at least sleep. And you might dream semi-consciously, or you might process things unconsciously. Is dream consciousness semi or fully conscious or not? It depends on how lucid it is, I think. Lucid dreaming isn't that different from being awake. It's just the information is coming from memories and coming from whatever, the live, improvised mixture of what you're trying to figure out. Like if you have stress and you're worried about things, they often become a subject, and then your brain might apply different ideas to find a way to de-stress or solve what you think of as a problem, or change your behavior perhaps the next day because you have hindsight, you've reflected on it in your dream. Yeah, so photography resembles that when you look at it, because things that it depends how you make it, but if you make it the way I make it, where they're just random, like really hardly ever do you purposefully shoot them together. I do, but a lot of them like this, they're from completely different times, like that, waiting a year and then reshooting over the top of a roll you're really making a sacrifice potentially, like of all the shots, but you're getting something new when you shoot on top of it that you may love a lot more. The more rolls of film you shoot, the more the less special you get about it. You know, this is another thing. Cleaning the lens is something I was just too lazy. I often hardly ever clean my lens. Now I do. Thus I have a lot of bad video that I shot with a dirty lens. Or bad photos. It's not as bad because it doesn't tend to show up unless it just affects the image in a random way. Sort of modifies the darkness of it, or doesn't really like appear as like dirt on the lens. This is the thing about this lens, is it's not made for this camera, and it doesn't have a special coating that makes the colors more correct. That's why the colors may look washed out, and you can see even just indoors I've got this like a lens flare. You know, it's like a super, I think it's like f1.2, and I had to turn the sensitivity of the camera way down. But there's something very like, just, I don't know, interesting about it, and I'm getting back to being experimental again, having time to sit and have a more mundane kind of daily life, so that when I go exploring and with the camera and take photos or try to think of different things to make video about, be more of a creator than just a survivor documenting things. You know, that such an interesting reflection. Yeah, so I'm joining together the old slideshow, a piece of it, with new and old film and of the double exposure type